Go ahead, Coach. You got any opening thoughts?
No, I think it's again kind of the same thing after Wake. I think there's a lot of teaching points to last night's game. I was really pleased with our effort. I thought we played really hard, and I thought we controlled the game kind of throughout. Yet still a little uncomfortable with our half-court execution against man, and I give them credit. I thought there was some unbelievable defensive sequences. By far and away our best game defensively. The trio of DeMonte, Tijan, and Mark Allstork did so many things right. The play DeMonte made on the last play of regulation, an elite play. There's not a lot of guys that have the instincts to go make the play he does to get the steal. You know, I thought we did a great job of hounding McIntosh. I think it was one of his top turnover games of his career. And again, I think there's some positives there. We've got to be better on the offensive end. You're not going to win on the road with 19 turnovers, and yet we found a way to stay in the game. In a night we were 3 of 18 from the three and had 19 turnovers, and those things have to be better. So tomorrow's a new challenge. You get a Maryland team who's you know, they've been picked toward the top of the conference. They're a veteran team. They've got a lot of experience, and then they've got a tremendous amount of size, and that'll be a challenge. So they've been led by their two guards, and both those kids are excellent players, and they're deep. And I'm sure that they're feeling a little bit like we are right now. They're angry, they're ticked off, and you know, theirs was magnified a little bit because they lost a home game. So we'll have to play well, and I expect us to do that, and back to work today.
Was there anything that told you that Tijan and Mark Allstork were going to have the kind of games they did? Maybe the best games they've had this year.
Well, defensively, those two guys have been our best defenders. And you know, what gets overlooked sometimes is defensive chemistry and the rotations, and those guys make very few mistakes defensively. And Tijan just hounds the ball constantly, and he's very good at it. And Mark Allstork, you can tell he's a senior. His rotations defensively are spot on. He doesn't miss much. If he gets beat, it's usually because he's trying to overhelp, and that's a nice problem to have. So those two, you know, I've said DeMonte does so many things right. Those three guys on the perimeter last night had a great chemistry going, and all made plays and rebounding the basketball, and that was something that you know, was a real positive last night. But those two guys do that every day, and that's something that you know, I'm very comfortable with is their effort and their attention to detail and assignment on the defensive end. They don't blow assignments, and that's a big part of what execution on the defensive end is.
Last week against NC Central, you said Tijan kind of took over the locker room during halftime, and then came out, and he obviously led you guys on that run. Have you noticed him continue to be a leader for this team and really step up in that way?
Yeah, I think, you know, people forget that we haven't had anybody that's been in these moments. This is all kind of a new experience for everybody, you know, being the guy or being one of the guys. And Tijan's becoming very comfortable with that role. He's stepping into it, and I think with that is coming some confidence. And I have a lot of confidence in him. And you know, I think the next step for him is understanding, like in late games, sometimes it's not about making a play for yourself, it's about making a play for others. And but I love his aggressiveness, I love his assertiveness. Tijan's going to make those free throws, you know, on most nights, and I've got a lot of confidence in him doing that. But he's becoming a guy that is reliable and trustworthy, and He knows what we're doing. He knows what we're about, and that's a comforting feeling.
Given all that, how much have you second-guessed over the last 14 hours your decision to not call a timeout and not draw up a play?
Not 1 second. Why would I ever call a timeout in a broken court? That's an advantage defense. I pray for other coaches to do that. Now you've got to get ready for a sideline out of bounds. Now you got to get ready for a zone out of bounds. Now you got to get ready for a man out of bounds. We talk about those situations a lot. We've got a transition set that we run into, and it's about making a play. I don't ever want to see a set defense in under 10 seconds late game. I won't call that timeout unless we're just completely out of sorts. I'll go back to the North Carolina Central game. North Carolina Central, if anybody paid attention, their coach got a bench warning with 12 seconds on the shot clock. Smart coach. You know what he did? He changed defenses. So that's why I don't like calling timeouts late game. And I'm not a big timeout guy unless it's just absolutely necessary. We practice those situations. We talk about those situations. So I haven't lost 1 second of sleep. We had Mark Allstork wide open in the corner. So,
and by the same token, I think Chris called a timeout, or he made a substitution for his free throw shooter so he could get his defense set. Was that your understanding of his strategy?
I have no idea what it was. I mean, maybe he got his worst defender out. Maybe who knows? I don't. I'm not concerned about that.
How can Michael Finke start to fill up the stat sheet again?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got to help him there. I think a lot of the shots that he gets are, and we're in transition. We're opportunities there. I think that we have to do a better job of executing to get him some shots, and we've got to get him some post touches. We've got to get him in the post. We've got to get him where he's very, very capable, right hand, left hand, and not just do it all for Laurent. And something we wanted to do last night was get Laurent touches on the block, and he's very effective down there. We've also got to do that for Michael, and I've got to help that there.
It seemed like there's a lot of fouls past 2 games, almost insane amounts. How much do you think some of the rule changes this year have played into that? And is it like slowing down the game to too much of a halt?
I don't know. I know last night, with the exception of Mark Smith having 2 in the first minute and a half, it was pretty enjoyable I was able to actually coach without foul trouble being part of it, other than him. There's 26 rule changes this year, so we found out about them in the fall, right before practice starts or as practice starts, and we've got to make adjustments accordingly. I thought we were much better last night than we were, yet we committed some silly ones. But for the most part, I thought we were better last night. We didn't have them in the bonus in the second half and till late, and I think that's part of any game right now.
Also, AJ had 4 fouls, but his last one, I think it was 6 minutes left, and he only got 1 attempt from 3.
They did a great job on him. They really did a nice job on him. They did a great job of spotting him. And again, I think that's our half-court execution. I've got to be able to scheme out of our spread and what we do there, and we're not executing well enough there. That's on me. I've got to get these guys to understand, and we've got to eliminate turnovers. AJ had a turnover. We drove right back into the defense late. I've never seen him do that, and we don't practice that. Those are the type of things that guys breaking things off that are hurting our team in the half court, and we'll get through that. It's not an easy offense to learn. It takes time. It takes patience. You've got to have a certain skill set in passing. I thought we did a great job last night of finding some first cutter layups and getting some easy opportunities in the paint, and yet we've got to be able to scheme what the defense is doing and play off that, and we're not there yet. And whether it's putting different guys in the pinch post or getting guys opportunities, Finke or AJ, and being able to execute them. And our knowledge and understanding is growing, but it's not there yet.
Can you talk about the Maryland team and what players we would expect to? Who do you have to stop?
Well, I think you look at I'll tell you, there's two things that jump out about Maryland when I look at the stat sheets and I watch film. I think they've got 100 more free throw attempts in 9 games than their opponents. They get to the foul line a great deal. Those are their guards. The other thing is they're plus 11 on the glass, and they throw a plethora of size at you. And although they're only getting 9 offensive rebounds a game, those are an effective 9. And Jackson is a kid that on the perimeter at the power forward is a guy who can put it on the floor and beat you. He can also shoot threes. He gets almost 3 offensive rebounds a game. Herder is coming off a game at Syracuse where he had 7 threes. He's got tremendous range. You know, so they're deep. You know, they've got a lot of pieces, and they've got a lot of size. But those are two of the areas I think that concern me the most and just jump out at me when I'm looking at the stat sheet.
Seemed like last year they didn't have anybody to stop Herder at the game here at the Illini team from last year, and the roster hasn't really changed that much. Do you have anybody that can match up against him defensively?
Yeah, we'll make it hard. I thought we did it. We played them last year. We lost a game by a point there at when I was last year at Oklahoma State, and I thought we did a pretty good job on him. I think again you'll see multiple guys have the responsibility of guarding, and then we'll do it by committee.
said on Thursday, every team's different, but having gone through, do you see similar developmental, I would say maybe growing pains, because you're talking about still getting there and getting your offense installed. Are there similar things that you see in installing a system and struggles that teams will have early in the season compared to later?
Absolutely. I mean, last night's game, and I told our staff in the locker room after the game, it was almost identical to our game last year when we played at Maryland. Kind of controlled, had a 9-10 point lead, they made a run, got it back up, and then lost down the stretch. And again, winning is hard, and there's a mentality and an attitude that goes with winning, and it's not always about making plays for yourself. It's about learning how to make plays for others and do it within the framework of what we do. I can show you a play card from 3 years in at SFA to a play card I have now, and it's a third. And so I've got to move slowly. We've got to be able to master a few things and keep some things simple. And yet, still try to win games and execute and exploit and scheme. At this level, there's schematics going on in every game. Somebody's doing something to take something away. And last night, we took their elbow entries away. They didn't have one elbow entry. Well, if you watch Northwestern, that's what they like to do. So their counter was to do a little dribble entry. Then we were able to take that away. It's a chess match throughout. And I've got to be able to do that in the half-court offense, and we're not quite there yet. And being able to put different guys in positions, and maybe that's evidenced by some of our turnovers. I can't help the travels; those are, we've got to slow down and clean those up. But it's execution, and it's got to be precise, and we're getting there. We're making strides, believe me.
What needs to happen to
Last
get
question here.
Smith going? I know last game he was in foul trouble, but the other two just seemed to be struggling in general that game.
Yeah, I don't make too much about Mark. He's a really good player that I think as the excluding last night where there's just no flow. I mean, there was, you're getting offensive, or you're getting in foul trouble, and it gets so hard to get back into a game. I think he's going through just what a lot of freshmen go through, and you look, and I don't care how many stars you are or what awards you won in high school, you can put all those in a trash can or put them on your wall to remember them. Because when you go to college, it's a different deal. And teams are teams are dialed in on him. He's not at the bottom of the scouting report. He's towards the top, and teams are trying to figure out how to guard him. And as that happens, you know, North Carolina Central, he was at the top of their scouting report, guy that they wanted to control, and so it's about figuring out exactly how he's going to get opportunities and put him in those spots. He's got to continue to grow on the defensive end, and that's something that he works at every day. He's got tremendous pride, and he's very conscientious, but I don't worry about Mark. Mark's got so much pride, and he'll bounce back. He'll be great today, and I expect him to be very good tomorrow.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, Brett.